Magical Explorer is a legendary tactical simulator where players alternate between school life and dungeon exploration. Players create characters, customize weapons, aim to become the best alchemists in town, and enjoy great freedom in a game known for its extensive content. A man at his computer focuses on completing routes and leveling up in a game, and plans to update a spreadsheet with his data. Playing Arrow J on the monitor is always a pleasure for him. He stares at the mirror, stunned by what he sees in his reflection. Something inside him has changed, and he realizes the mirror shows him, right down to the earrings that mark him as Takeo Ito of the MX group, so he pinches himself to prove he is not dreaming. Looking around, he decides this place is a realm of magical explorers like his old world. Meanwhile, something unexpected outside the window catches his eye. From the rooftop, he watches an ordinary scene in the magical explorer world, where a woman with elf ears walks a dog and an elf, and two children smile nearby. Familiar landscape and people tell him he is truly in the MX world, and he feels a surge of excitement. Filled with enthusiasm, he celebrates the chance to meet the game's heroines, but soon realizes something that surprises him. He notes that MX is full of heroines and appealing female characters, some of whom didn't even originate in the game. Realizing he's in an Arrow G, he grows excited about the chance to share the experience with them. At first he felt excited and nervous, but he fell into despair when he realized he had been reincarnated as the game's best friend, knowing that in Aragas the protagonist and the friend are treated like night and day. He notices how Arrow J protagonists seem absurdly perfect. Their skills show up even in the simplest tasks. A little kindness makes the heroines fall for them, and the plot moves from one convenient setup to the next, always tipping toward the protagonist. Always unlucky, the best friend character is never popular, and girls never approach him. Even a hint of interest in another male character can spark outrage among players, pushing the best friend into even more suffering. He gets why the best friend character never stands a chance with the girls in games. Some become accidental cupids, and others are mocked or ignored by the heroines. Upset when an annoying character stole the protagonist's girl, he complained on forums and support pages. Kneeling on the floor in despair, he can't believe he reincarnated exactly as the protagonist's best friend, and on top of that in an Eroge. After sizing up Takyoto, he admits the guy isn't bad. But he knows he is the kind of person who steals all the attention. Kyusuke Takyoto is the classic best friend and comic relief at the protagonist's side, knowing all about the heroines, sharing that information, and ultimately watching them all be won over by the protagonist. Good-looking Takyoto behaves like a fool and a pervert, making crude comments about the girls' bodies, so everyone hates him and he often gets beaten for it. Nursing a headache and feeling worried, he decides to stop lamenting and start planning his new life. Finding the acceptance letter from the Magic Academy, he realized the story was just beginning. The prologue opens with the MX entrance ceremony. Surprised, he realizes he's living in an unseen part of the MX world. Neither the anime nor the expansions showed this part. Filled with excitement, he embraces the chance to explore something new and admits that, despite everything, being reincarnated here wasn't so bad. 2 weeks remain until the entrance ceremony, and he knows the school Takyoto attends well. He watches impress the Grand Tsukuyomi Magic Academy, an elite school attended by the protagonist and other characters. Now part of this world, he is excited to use magic, which he has always found amazing. Panic hits him when he realizes this isn't like the game, where he could just click a button. Not knowing how to use magic yet, he worries he'll be expelled on the first day. Searching Takyoto's room for clues, he assumes Takyoto must have studied magic at some point. Searching the room, he finds notebooks filled with pointless scribbles. Takyoto clearly didn't pay attention in class, and his notes are terrible. Outraged, he can't understand how someone so clueless was accepted to the academy. While searching, he finds a more recent notebook by Takyoto's, surprisingly well organized, and wonders if he changed his attitude. Shortly after, he picks up a book he believes is Takyoto's diary, and something inside instantly catches his eye. The diary shows Takyoto endured a very harsh life. He lost his parents, was cut off from his mother's family, and his only living relative, his paternal grandmother, was hospitalized with dementia. The content shocks him, and he realizes how heavy and dark Takyoto's life was. He remembers a scene in the game where Takyoto got sad when a heroine talked about family, and now knows it was real, not a bug. Surprised by Takyoto's secret past, he keeps exploring and finds a book titled Magic for Monkeys, and he starts reading it right away because it seems perfect. He starts studying the book seriously. They discover that every living creature in the air has mana, and that this mana creates magic. He also knows that the only difference between ordinary people and mages is how much mana they have. At last, he understands the basics of how magic works, so he tries something simple and focuses. Soon a strange, tickling sensation comes over him. Mana responds, and when he opens his hand, a soft light blooms, proof he has finally learned to use magic, so he celebrates realizing he can cast spells. And even if it is only the simplest light spell, he is amazed he can switch it on and off at will. While much remains unknown, this new power feels incredible and thrilling. He remembers MX has many types of magic, including offensive, defensive, healing, support, and odd ones like meme and sexy magic. As the best friend, he notices Takyoto has a much larger mana reservoir than others. With effort, he believes he can leave the unlucky role and become someone with real potential. He remembers MX focused on dungeons and more. If he had enough strength, he could confront them with teleportation circles. Knowing the game so well, he thinks he can find places never shown before. Excited, he realizes he's really inside the game world, not just the dungeons, but everything. He knows that his greatest weapon is his knowledge of the game. Having beaten MX several times, he knows exactly where to find every overpowered item, every powerful skill, and all the potential to become the most powerful. Knowing the game inside out, and with Takyoto's massive mana reserve at his command, he realizes how big his advantage is. Determined, he resolves to fight to become the strongest of all. Determined to become the strongest, he knows the path will be dangerous. The most popular heroines are absurdly powerful, and Ori Hijiri is so strong he can defeat the Demon King alone, while the developer's favorite characters are completely unbalanced, making the journey harder. Determined and energetic. Determined to become the strongest of all, he vows to explore dungeons, floating castles, and the world tree, and to follow his own path without limits. Looking forward to the 2 weeks before the entrance ceremony. The school tuition comes to mind, and Takyoto's diary shows he probably doesn't have enough money before he can think of a solution. The doorbell rings, and when he opens the door, he freezes at the sight of Marino Hanamura, director of Tsukiyomi Magic Academy, standing before him as she greets him calmly. It is hard for him to believe a character from Mexico is here in person. So surprised, he tries to figure out why the director of Tsukiyomi Magic Academy came to see him and confirms the man's name is Kyusuke Takyoto. With a smile, she invites him to go out to eat, something totally unexpected. He is stunned to find himself facing Marino Hanamura, a powerful figure in the magic world and director of Tsukiyomi Magic Academy, who in the game only appeared occasionally to advise the protagonist. Meeting her that early and in person was something he never expected. Marino apologized for appearing unannounced, acknowledging that her sudden visit might have been a shock. Before she can introduce herself formally, he panics and eagerly says he already knows who she is, trying to calm her and avoid any misunderstanding. The page offers a witty critique of the absurd cliches in Enro J game plots, noting that many titles invent supernatural or wildly unlikely situations just to justify sensual scenes. For example, families may swap a son and a daughter between neighboring houses. This conveniently places the protagonist in a harem, and the narration ends by saying these games create a super reality that twists logic for the sake of the story. The protagonist lights up when he learns he'll have dinner with Marino-san, a key character from the game. He'd normally refuse an invitation from a stranger, but he remembers he now lives in an Eroge world. Knowing Marino well from the game, he feels relaxed and confident as she greets him with a smile and invites him out. The evening ends on a light, lively note of expectation. Marino apologizes that he only managed to reserve the best available restaurant, which shocks the protagonist. The place is extremely luxurious, and it makes him feel that rich people are from another world. The dish looks like it costs a whole month's expenses, but he pretends it's normal and thanks her excitedly as Marino smiles with satisfaction. Takyoto tastes the meat and is stunned by the flavor. An explosion of flavor hits him, a moment he never expected, with the carefully prepared sauce and the meat's juices standing out, and he thinks an ordinary worker would never have access to something like this, while Marino, amused, smiles and calls him a silly boy. Seeing Takyoto so excited, Marino decides to eat too and does so eagerly, still impressed by the quality of the food. While she tastes the dish, Takyoto grows distracted by her appearance, especially her eyelashes and perfume, finding her extremely sexy. Morno tastes the food and is delighted, praising its flavor enthusiastically. Takyoto watches her reaction and thinks it's hard to believe she has an adult son when she looks so young and charming. He sees her as a typical Eroge character, a beautiful woman of indeterminate age who still looks youthful, and feels completely enchanted by Marino, like he's in paradise finally seeing up close a character he always admired in the game. He remembers that when he learned she had no root of her own, he sent the developers many support forms and surveys asking for more content about her, but had no success. Meanwhile, Marino notices the stare and, confused, asks whether there is something on his face. Takyodo realizes he has been acting strangely while staring at Marino and apologizes right away. Takyodo admits he couldn't help it because she is so famous in the magic world, and Marino, confused, asks if everything is okay while he, still shocked, realizes she's not just a character on a screen but a real person standing in front of him, and the scene ends with a light touch of their hands that leaves Takyodo completely surprised. Marino gently takes Takyodo's hands and tells him not to be nervous, saying their relationship will become much closer from now on, and a surprised, embarrassed Takyodo can only think about how soft her hands are. Marino meets Takyodo's gaze, grips his hands firmly, and says plainly, "I have taken you in as my son." Takyodo is stunned to learn Marina is a relative on his mother's side. She explains they were cousins and, after hearing about his tragedy, chose to take him in as family, and without warning him she wanted to be there right away, so Marina, with tears in her eyes, apologizes, and Takyodo, surprised by this unexpected turn, thanks her with a smile, seeing she is still as kind as in the game. Marino invites Takyodo to move in with her and her daughter because the house is near Tsukiyomi Magic Academy and has extra rooms. She says her daughter agreed to the arrangement and told him not to be shy. Takyodo was surprised and remembers that in the game he lived in the dorm next to the protagonist, so this is a major change from the original story. The protagonist points out that Marino's daughter is famous in her own right. Surprised, Marino confirms that her daughter is Hatsumi Hanamura, an academy instructor who is also a key character in the game and gives the original story's protagonist an essential skill. The protagonist hesitates at the offer to live with Marino and her daughter, a situation that did not occur in the original game, but sees it as a unique opportunity he must try. Realizing that taking this path could alter the main story, since in the original game Takyodo lived in the dorm, he hesitates because changing the plot too much could be risky. The protagonist starts to doubt his choice to live as he pleases, recognizing this timeline is unfamiliar and that deviating from the game's route so early may not be wise. Knowing the events and their triggers, he avoids actions that could upend everything, because even with time before the main story, a choice in the prologue can change the whole narrative. Waking up, the protagonist finds Marino Hanamura and her daughter Hatsumi serving him a luxurious breakfast, with Marino lively and welcoming, and Hatsumi offering a simple good morning. Surprised by the whole situation, he cannot imagine refusing such an amazing offer. Marino notices his hesitation and apologizes, saying she did not mean to pressure him. Still confused, the protagonist keeps thinking about what to do next. Morno suggests that since the school dorm application deadline is still open, the protagonist could try living with her and her daughter. Excited by the idea, he accepts immediately. She suggests exchanging numbers to arrange details later, but he hesitates and says he may have a problem with his phone or something related. The protagonist, embarrassed, admits he doesn't have a cell phone and explains he searched everywhere but couldn't find one. Morno is stunned, his eyes wide with despair as he realizes the situation. Marino is shocked and convinced Takyodo has no cell phone because of a deep trauma, and she thinks his parents were killed by demons right after a final call. That explains why he never answers the phone in the game. He has an extreme hatred of demons, while the protagonist is completely lost in her dramatic conclusions. Takyodo stumbles into the room saying he drank all the water from the school well because he was thirsty and acting like a fool, which shocks the other students given his tragic past, with one calling him crazy, another calling him an airhead, and a girl asking if he is all right. Takyodo grows thoughtful as he realizes how hard life is for the character he took on and feels sorry for him. Meanwhile, Marina watches quietly, wants to do something to make his life better, and kindly says there is nothing to worry about. Takyodo says he canceled his cell phone plan to save money and is fine with it now, so he borrows her phone for a moment. Marina feels relieved and happy that everything is fine. He realizes how much he prefers seeing her smile. To celebrate becoming official family, Marino gives Takyodo a new cell phone as a gift. At the store, she chooses the newest model for him, leaving Takyodo surprised and a little insecure about her generosity. Marino says goodbye to Takyodo after a fun day and explains she will need to travel for work. She gives him a large sum before leaving to cover his expenses for the week, and Takyodo is shocked by its size. They said it would cover a whole year, but Marino, unfazed, is already considering leaving the card with him, thinking the amount won't be enough. Takyoto says goodbye, surprised by how much money he received. Marino, worried, insists he can call her anytime if he needs anything. It makes him realize Marino has clearly lost touch with financial reality, but also that he is now connected to the powerful Hanamura family. It holds major influence over the magical, financial, and political sectors. Now he feels the wind is at his back, despite some differences from his memory of the game. Takyoto decides not to spend the money on daily expenses and instead invests it in something that will make him stronger. Examples include weapons, armor, magical, or rare items. Using his knowledge of the game and the spreadsheet he created, he is eager to see how far he can go on his own, since this world has no guides or walkthroughs like the original game. With 2 weeks left before classes start at Tsukiyomi Magic Academy, Takyoto pushes himself to the limit, planning to test his skills immediately so he is ready for all the event flags that will appear when school begins. Holding cash and feeling motivated, he takes the first step in his preparation. Takyoto enters a convenience store called Save In and notices that Wakoku resembles modern Japan, with the same currency, the same seasons, and the same kinds of stores. In the MX world, the main difference is that different races of people live alongside magic. Filled with excitement, he finds his goal. Magical instant noodles in tonkatsu shoyu flavor. Takyoto stocks a large supply of instant noodles to focus entirely on magic training. Having mastered the beginner light spell, he decides to try a new one. This time he wanted something more thrilling. For him, real magic meant mission magic. Takyoto is eager to master offensive magic, the flashiest and most coveted spell type among players. After seeing how the heroine's magical attacks won over the audience, he wants to learn them too, even if he has to start with the simplest ones. Determined to succeed, he vows to master this type of magic no matter what. Takyoto begins his magic training with the most basic spells. Flipping through his materials for something even he could use, he finds beginner spells like water gun and fireball, becomes excited and confident to start, chooses light magic, and tells himself it's too easy. Takyoto prepares to use magic like he did before with light, concentrating as he gathers his mana, focuses his mind, visualizes the spell, and points at a can. He fires forcefully, unleashing a powerful spell. Takyoto is stunned to see the magic work as water shoots from his finger. Thrilled by the successful water gun spell, he celebrates its usefulness and soon uses it to water the garden, pleased with the water savings and how practical the magic is. Frustrated, Takyoto finds his offensive water gun remains weak even at full strength and begins to doubt his affinity for water magic. He wonders if fire, wind, or earth magic would be weak for him too. He remains excited by the chance to master legendary magics because he's in an Erej world and there could still be something promising hidden. Takyoto collapses to the ground, beaten and frustrated. Realizing none of his magic works for combat, he knows even clearing a simple dungeon would be suicide, and his bold goal of becoming the strongest suddenly feels distant. Despite everything, he is relieved the MX world isn't too dark, since in his current state, he would barely survive 10 minutes. Takyoto had plenty of mana, but no talent for offensive emission magic, the popular spell type among players. That made many think he was only useful until the mid-game. There was a specific way to use his powers that someone skilled in MX could learn to unlock his real potential, and though it was complicated, there was a loophole that let him grow. Takyoto remembers the long red stole, a key part of his character. In the game, the stole was made from a special material that enabled monoflow and was a key part of his limited edition character sheet. To use Takyoto's strengths in the real world, he concludes he will need that stole. Takyoto decides to search for the magical fabric to make his stole, because a ready-made one in the right size would be hard to find. He begins searching for mono fabric. Despair sets in at the outrageous prices. Even all the money Marino-san gave him would not be enough. He then finds a cheaper red spider silk option that fits his needs, finally something he can afford. Takyoto bought 2 units of the magical fabric, impressed by the fast delivery that would arrive in just 1 hour. Waiting, he opens magic for monkeys and learns of 2 ways to strengthen mana, one new even to him. Excited, he says intensive training will begin as soon as the fabric arrives. Takyoto heads out for a run in the fabric he bought, but soon finds the long, flashy pieces bother him and attract too much attention. The people around him react oddly, and even the children's comments point to a strange man nearby. Embarrassed and out of place, he decides to find another place to train. Takyoto finds a new, quieter place to train and casts a spell to strengthen his body. He sprinted excitedly at top speed, determined to improve his physical abilities with magic. Takyoto keeps training, running with the magical reinforcement active. He says his current goal is to raise his level and gain new skills, so he must make the most of his huge mana reservoir by focusing on enhancement and enchantment magic. He remembers that, as in the game, there are two ways to increase mana. The first is to level up by collecting magical particles. Takiodo remembers a second way to increase mana by using magic until it is completely exhausted. To do that, he keeps enhancement and enchantment magic active while running. Next, he enchants his magical fabric and is impressed to find he can make it as hard as iron. Despite running and constantly using magic, Takiodo sees his mana still isn't running out. Impressed by his stamina, he gets excited that, when he levels up, he could add elements like water and fire to his enchantments. He decides to use the enchantment's abilities to force more mana consumption and push himself further. Takiodo activates the skills of his stall, placing a third hand on his right and a fourth on his left, and says these are the keys to his close combat fighting style, while showing enthusiasm for his new way of fighting. Takiodo shows he's comfortable using the third and fourth hand skills, saying he's already used to moving them, while the narrator points out that in the original game those skills weren't available by default, and that Takiodo kept making excuses until he finally managed to activate them. Takiodo intensifies his training, determined to master the new abilities quickly and before moving into the Hanamura family house. After 5 hours of non-stop running using enhancement magic, Takiodo is surprised to find he hasn't come close to draining his mana, and even when he ramped up the training his energy still felt endless, leaving him confused and stranded in a distant field. Takiodo realizes training, without knowing his mana limit, is highly inefficient. Realizing he needs a magic item to check his stats, including hidden attributes, he eats and reads and accepts he must start from scratch to evolve properly. Takiodo learns that beyond general levels, there are hidden stats like constitution, magic, resistance, stealth, and others. After so many advances, he finds it frustrating that magic is still poorly documented. Determined, he decides he must talk to someone who actually practices magic, and he knows exactly who to look for. Takiodo says Marino-san is a specialist. Marino-san is famous for defeating a rank S monster single-handedly, and Takiodo admits he couldn't ask for a better magic teacher. Still, he feels nervous about it. Takiodo panics at the thought of asking Marino for lessons, calls her the Witch of Tsukiyomi, and figures the idea is absurd since she must be far too busy. Ultimately, he chooses to keep training alone, but soon burns himself with magic. Even after days of training, Takiodo hits a wall, stuck repeating the same moves and knowing practice alone won't get him far, frustrated that without the strength to use his game knowledge, he is still far from becoming the strongest, and then he drops his expensive magical equipment, dirtying everything. Takiodo finally meets Marino-san, who ran over after sensing a strong surge of mana nearby, and congratulated him on practicing magic, clearly proud and enthusiastic. He feels surprised and relieved by her arrival, seizing the moment when Marino-san was smiling and available. Summoning his courage, Takiodo drops to his knees and shouts desperately, "Please stay with me." The scene catches Marino off guard, and he goes into shock at his own sudden, intense declaration. Marino freezes at Takiodo's sudden declaration and panics briefly, mistakenly thinking he is confessing romantically. He quickly clarifies he only wants her help with magical training. Relieved, Marino smiles and says she would be happy to help, reminding him they are family now. Takiodo thanks her excitedly, and Marino gently scolds him for being so formal. Takiodo tells Marino he is training to run while keeping his stall lifted so it never touches the ground and keeps his enchantment magic active even when not training. Surprised, Marino learns he can maintain the spell for 10 straight hours without draining his mana, hears him say his goal is to keep the enchantment for 24 hours, and Marino admires his magical stamina. Marino praises Takiodo's idea of keeping the stole constantly enchanted, saying it has many uses and can increase mana, and Takiodo is pleased the book's information was correct. Marino asks to touch the stole, he agrees eagerly, and she watches closely, her heart racing as she approaches, showing she is nervous. Marino touches Takiodo's enchanted stole and is struck by an intense mana shock. She is surprised by the enchantment's power. Even as an experienced mage, she admits his magic and enchantments may surpass hers. Takiodo is shocked by the compliment and cannot believe he could be better than her. Still, he knows that to become the strongest, he must surpass people like Marino. Takiodo's mana reserve is extraordinary, more than twice that of the heroines who constantly cast powerful spells, and it is his most important attribute. Every action he performs uses mana, so his training often leaves him breathless. To improve control, he He asks Marino to watch as he moves his enchanted stoles during the run to check if he is doing it right. Marino agrees and prepares to watch. Takyodo launches into a run and releases the enchanted stoles with precise, rapid throws. Using force and control, he makes sweeping curves, sudden attacks, and quick moves while keeping the enchantment active. Marino looks on in surprise and admiration, visibly impressed by his skill. Marino points out that Takyodo has been running for a long time. After trying to turn the stole into a shield, he reflects that despite intense training he might be too rigid and not changing enough, but he also recognizes many possibilities with his skills and feels excited to explore new uses for magic. Takyodo turns his stole into a fan-shaped shield. Marino watches and says shields can take many shapes, wondering if he pictured a specific structure when creating his. Takyodo looks surprised and admits he acted more on instinct than by planning. Marino hits Takyodo's shield hard and easily knocks it down. According to her, the fan shape can't withstand repeated impacts in the same spot and doesn't spread force well. To improve, she guides Takyodo to picture a detailed shield shaped to deflect and soften impacts. Takyodo understands and begins to focus on it. Takyodo creates a new shield, this time curved to deflect impacts. Marino praises the result, says the shape will be useful in combat, thanks her for the help, and notes the shield is like those in games that spread out the force of attacks. Takyodo confirms the third and fourth hand abilities are not ordinary offensive skills. He says they are versatile, and when mastered, can split stone and form shields as strong as steel. Takyodo says he'll become even stronger, and Marino jokes that he's a hardworking guy, saying his abilities would let him clear even the Academy dungeon's lowest levels with no problem. Takyodo still feels nervous when she says he'll be able to pick good team members once classes start. He doesn't know how to handle it and realizes he'll have to prepare too. A carriage pulls up in front of a lavish mansion. In the hall, a butler respectfully approaches Princess Ludi, a young woman, informs her that travel preparations are complete and offers himself at her disposal, and she responds with a simple, elegant thank you that shows her class and formality. Princess Ludi steps from the bathtub and walks calmly down the hall as a button is pressed to mute the surrounding sounds. Two maids come to dress her, wrapping her with delicate, professional care. The scene moves to the final touches as Ludi is clothed in an elegant gown and jewelry, showing the care and respect given to her rank. Princess Ludivine, now ready, looks out from her balcony and says the time has finally come. She walks gracefully with her ladies and is met with respect throughout the castle. Her official presentation takes center stage as the second princess of the Trifle Empire, Ludivine Marie-Angela Trifle. On spotting someone familiar, she brightens and calls for Clarice with a warm smile, revealing a kind, approachable side despite her nobility. Holding her loyal companion's hands, Ludivine says there is nothing to fear with her around and places her full trust. The maid Clarice smiles and says it will be a pleasure to protect her. Beside the princess's luggage, the imposing armor and shield appear as someone vows to protect her no matter what, while Ludivine watches calmly with a slight smile. Ludivine Marie-Angela Trifle, known as Ludi, is one of the game's main heroines and appears on the cover, a sign of her importance and the developer's favoritism that usually indicates she is a powerful character, while being the second daughter of the Emperor of Treffle from Elven lands. Ludivine's cold, verbally abusive behavior caused the so-called Ludi syndrome among players, and she treated the protagonist Takyodo like trash while being harsh toward men in general. Despite that, she remained immensely popular with Eroge players because once someone earned her trust, she became deeply caring and devoted, sharply contrasting with her earlier demeanor. Takyodo finishes packing and prepares to move, excited about the week before classes start. He says he sent everything he needed ahead of time and is ready for the new phase. Morno-san arrives by car to pick him up and says he is excited to live together, even if only for a trial period. She suggests taking a detour and promises he'll love it. Arriving in the city, Takyodo was stunned by the number and quality of magical items and rare weapons for sale, such as mithril, orichalcum, and heihai iricane, and he had never seen them up close before. Marino says the city is home to both the Magic Academy and the airport, giving it far more variety than other places. She asks if there is any weapon he would like to test, and he pauses to think. Most players turn Takyodo into a real defensive wall by using force shields with the third hand and fourth hand abilities, but although that was effective as a tank, Takyodo doesn't find it fun and wants to fight with everything he has. The main problem is he lacks the powerful weapons other characters have, leaving him at a major disadvantage in offensive combat. Mid-game, the heroines shine with unique weapons and powerful abilities, leaving Takyodo isolated, expelled from the main group and stuck on exploratory tasks in the magical instruments lab, replaced by stronger characters and seen as weak, while his irritating behavior drives players to stop using him and underlines how poorly he was regarded in the game. Takyoto hasn't chosen a specific weapon yet and believes a close combat weapon would be best. Marino suggests he focus on training both offense and defense until he masters his skills. Next, she reveals the magical fabric sewn into a perfectly fitted scarf and stole, and Takyoto is impressed and thankful. After that, they headed to the nearby Hanamura house. Marina says an unexpected issue came up at work and asks Takyoto to handle things on his own for a while, promising she'll return later. She hands him a pamphlet for her family's Hanamura hotel, promising they'll look after him and suggesting they meet there later. Takyoto agrees, and when he sees the hotel's name, he is surprised because his mother was also a Hanamura, though he knows little about her. Takyoto arrives at the Hanamura Hotel and is struck by the building's size and the grand feel of everything. It is clear to him that the Hanamura group is very powerful. Entering the lobby, he finds it even more luxurious and decides to use the time to study magic. Takyoto was studying in the hotel lobby when a powerful explosion shook the building's annex. Chaos erupts, people scramble, and an employee begins evacuating everyone there. Takyoto panics when he realizes his cell phone is missing in the confusion and decides he must leave immediately. Takyoto tries to call Marino, but his phone is ruined. As he considers his options, he spots three men in suits acting suspiciously and suspects they were behind the explosion. He watches them enter the elevator without making a sound. Moments later, Takyoto hears a familiar voice shouting in the distance, and it catches his attention. Takyoto is surprised to see Ludi, one of the game's main heroines, standing before him since he never expected to find her there, and Ludi, with a serious, firm expression, accuses the men of planning to betray her from the start while her armed maid and butler stand silently beside her, ready to act. Takyoto realizes he's in danger because the men in black there are enemies on Ludi's route in the game, and though he tries to stay calm, he knows the situation is critical. Ludi replies that she does not understand their motives, but warns they will not get away with it, because her trusted servants, Aurelian and Clarice, are with her. Takyoto realized this was an important moment in Ludi's route and also noticed that Ludi feared men, or more broadly people, because something had caused that fear. Takyoto recalls Ludi's past in the game. Betrayed by someone she trusted, her route gradually reveals that story. In early development, she lost her virginity, which drew heavy criticism from players, so the developers changed her backstory and made her fear of people the result of that betrayal. Takyoto realizes he is exactly where this event takes place in the game. He only had indirect information before, but the situation makes him certain. The betrayal event is about to begin there. The men turn violent, and Ludi's knight hits one of them hard. A bandit aims a gun, and the situation escalates quickly. Butler Aurelian raises his hand to cast defensive magic. The maids shield Ludi, who is confused and surprised by the attack. The order is clear. Protect Princess Ludi at all costs. Aurelian blasts Clarice with magic and violently throws her to the ground. Ludi rushes to Clarice, stunned by the betrayal as Clarice lies wounded and immobile, and the princess speaks with quiet disappointment, while Ludi cannot understand how someone who had faithfully served the family for so many years could act this way. Ludi tries to understand the betrayal, convinced Clarice must have a reason, while Aurelian despises her and calls her naive. He knocks her down and pins her to the ground, holding a gun to her head, ready to kill. Frozen, Ludi watches as Aurelian reveals his cruel plan, saying it would not be fun to simply kill her. Surrounded, she sinks into despair, unable to accept what is happening, crying for help as he and his accomplices hold her down. In Ludi's darkest moment, a surprise attack knocks one captor down and saves Ludi. A hooded figure appears, uses reinforcement magic, and quickly defeats the enemies. Aurelian recognizes the magic but cannot identify the intruder. Ludi remains protected while the stunned attackers fire, trying to stop the unknown man. Takeo appears hooded and soothes Ludi, assuring her he will not hurt her, covers the injured Clarice, and steps in instead of Marino. The person who would normally save Ludi at this point is out of reach, so Takeo, unable to contact her, vows to do everything he can to protect the heroine he loves. Shaken by what she went through, Ludi trembles while Takeo notices she is not well and moves to protect her. Facing an order to kill the three, he activates the third hand and fourth hand skills to create spinning barriers to buy time. Takeo looks at Ludi, remembering she is his favorite character. He knows her full name and theme song by heart, has played every route, and has been moved by her ending several times. Realizing Ludi is in shock and cannot help, the protagonist shields himself with his enchanted cloak, but it keeps him from seeing the approaching enemies as the fire spreads. He knows it's only a matter of time before he's caught, so he activates his third hand and fourth hand skills to buy time and prepares to execute his plan. The protagonist warns that Ludi is in danger. They ask the injured girl for help, and despite being exhausted, she says she can cast defensive magic while pretending to be unconscious. Turning to Ludi, he tells her he needs her to activate her mana as well, even if only briefly. The protagonist asks Ludi to shout Aegis as a lure. The real spell she must cast is a simple light spell. He says shouting alone will fool the enemies, giving them 10 seconds to act, and he promises to take care of the rest. Ludi channels her mana and starts the count. She casts a light spell at the exact moment, surprising the enemies and creating enough confusion for the protagonist to shout and move in to exploit their disorientation. Calling Aegis, Ludi activates a defensive spell while the protagonist advances carrying her, and the magical shield blocks enemy attacks, creating an opening. The men in black spotted the escape and shouted to focus on Treffle, ignoring the fleeing boy. Realizing the enemies are focused only on Ludi, the protagonist uses it to his advantage and moves quickly to launch a surprise attack. Ludi responds to the plan, shouts light, and casts a spell that blinds the enemies, and the protagonist sees his chance and rushes into the chaos. The protagonist uses the light magic effect to charge into the enemies, striking several hard despite their attempts to react. Activating enchantments and hardening his arm to boost his power, he delivers a final direct blow that knocks down the enemy leader and ends the fight. The protagonist defeats the entire enemy group in a single move, and the cloth he used in the plan slowly falls as he stands firm. Ludi cheers, then finishes by binding everyone with immobilization magic, ending the threat. Confirming the enemies are completely immobilized, the protagonist secures the area as Ludi approaches, surprised he defeated them all alone. She thanks him from the heart for saving her, and he grows shy, thinking about how cute she is. Relieved, Marino rushes to Kasuk and says she heard about the hotel attack and is glad he is okay. Kasuk apologizes for worrying her, and Marino asks him not to act so recklessly again. Kasuk learns that Ludi, the girl he rescued, is the daughter of the Emperor of Trifle and will attend the same school as him, and Marino says Ludi and her maid want to make a formal introduction. Kasuk pretends to be surprised, but grows nervous that they will ask him to take responsibility for what happened. Ludi and Claris formally thank him for saving them. He becomes flustered while trying to apologize for what happened. Ludi smiles menacingly and teases, asking whether what he did was accidental. She then hands him a thank you letter from the Emperor, and Kasuk feels relieved but also scared by Ludi's intense, yet cute manner. Clarice says the recent attack was carried out by a cult called the Church of the Evil Lord, and warns an enemy is still at large, so the academy where Ludi studies could be in danger. Rumors say a spy has infiltrated. Kasuk realizes he altered the game's original story, leaving him unsure about what's next. Marino says this church has always watched his family, putting him directly in its crosshairs. Clara warns that because he saved Princess Ludi, enemies will see Kasuk as an obstacle, and he will be in danger. Clara says that in an emergency, her first duty is to protect Ludi, though she also wants to keep Kasuk safe, and Marino admits the situation is now more complicated and points out that if Claris must divide her strength, she cannot guarantee both will be safe, while Ludi listens closely and seems to reflect on how serious the situation is. Marino surprises everyone by asking Ludi to move in with them. Ludi is stunned and unsure how to respond. Kasuk panics at the idea, Claris grows excited about the possibility, and Marino smiles confidently, saying she will check it with Kasuk's father. Kasuk panics at the idea of living under the same roof as Ludi, but Marino reassures him that it is the best way to keep them both safe, and says she and Hatsumi will be there, which calms Claris. Claris and Marina admit they already know one another. Kasuk is surprised by Clara's comment that she owes Hatsumi her basic understanding of magic. Ludi says she spoke with her father, who is honored to accept the offered help, and Marino responds with enthusiasm. All agree that Ludi and Claris will join the group a few days before classes begin. Kasuk believes that in the game Ludi showed up later because of that event, but now, since things are different, they can start school together. Kasuk is excited to live with Ludi and her maid, but Marino warns the three to get along and not act with malice. As they walk together, he realizes he doesn't know how much his actions have changed the world. Key characters and heroines are showing up earlier than expected, and plots and events he never encountered in the game are unfolding, which makes him stop and think. Kasuk spots a new girl gripping a sword, her face set with determination. He hopes to meet the other heroines too. her arrival makes clear the world around him keeps growing beyond the game he knew. The narrator explains Eroge is an expensive hobby, with games costing $100 to $200, and players worry about money and social relationships, while the game's protagonists mostly try to get close to the girls. Once you solve the money problem, the hard part is choosing which heroine to follow. Even if you haven't played the game, you still have to pick the most interesting one while considering each store's exclusive bonuses. A character you liked in the demo might be very different in the full game, which can be disappointing. A single route can leave such a lasting mark that it keeps the player from exploring the others, yet those games remain the most memorable. Many characters follow complex paths and have unique abilities, and Kyusuke Takiodo is a special example. Kyusuke struggles to adjust to the new living arrangement as tensions with Hatsumi grow. Despite admiring her beauty, he cannot understand what goes on in her mind. Hatsumi, an instructor at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy, stays silent as Kyusuke tries to break the ice with an energetic self-introduction. Kyusuke tries to start a conversation, but Hatsumi stays silent, leaving the atmosphere unbearably tense. He sees his energetic style clash with hers like oil and water. The situation so awkward he understands why the game's character preferred living in the dorms, and even his attempts at humor fail. Silence just makes the pressure in the air rise. Marino prepares a special dinner to welcome the new living arrangement in the house. Kyusuke is touched by the food and becomes visibly emotional. She invites everyone to help themselves since there is plenty. The mood shifts completely, and the house finally fills with warmth and joy from her gesture. Kyusuke praises the food enthusiastically, calling it the best he's ever had. Marino blushes and smiles at the compliment, while Hatsumi eats quietly but is clearly satisfied. Kyusuke is surprised to discover he's eating meat from a horned monster rabbit. Marino explains she chose ingredients he would probably like and included Hatsumi's favorite dishes. Despite being shocked by where the meat came from, Kyusuke admits his life has been full of unusual experiences since arriving in this world. Relieved, Kyusuke thanks Marino after she says she already told Hatsumi everything about his situation, and Marino praises his effort. He says he is committed to his training and studies, and Kyusuke asks Hatsumi to be kind to him. For the first time, she shows curiosity and asks directly why he is working so hard on his magical training. Kyusuke says he is devoting himself completely to magic training, so he will be ready before classes start. Marino says the house there is ideal for that, with a library, enchantment labs, and a nearby waterfall. As he grows excited about the idea, Marina gets an urgent call and has to leave. Marino says goodbye and asks Hatsumi to show Kyusuke around the house and act like a good older sister. Surprised by the request, Hatsumi pauses to consider it. Kyusuke panics when Marino leaves, calling her his lifeline and visibly nervous, while Hatsumi accepts the task and Marino promises to return as soon as possible. Hatsumi calls Kyusuke by his first name, and while guiding him through the house, surprises him by calling herself Wonshin. Kyusuke is confused by the sudden change in her attitude, but relieved she is talking to him. Then she takes him to his room. After the short tour, Kyusuke praises the house and becomes excited about living together, while Hatsumi shows him her room and her mother's, which surprises him. She says Marino-san is very beautiful and could be mistaken for a student, but notes she herself is much older than him, then asks if he likes older women, which makes the mood slightly awkward. During the conversation, Hatsumi asks if Kyusuke is there to try to be her new father. The revelation leaves him completely speechless, and as he thinks about it, he remembers that Hatsumi's father, Marina-san's husband, was apparently murdered, yet he still admits Marina-san is totally his type, which makes the whole situation feel like something from an Eroge game. Hatsumi chose to continue her father's unfinished research after he died. The game's official developer blog revealed they had created a detailed backstory for her, but project managers cut it. After the hotel fight, Kyusuke reflects on his weakness. Even as the game's best friend character, he refuses to lose to the original protagonist Iori. He realizes he must sharpen his combat awareness and considers learning clairvoyance or the mind's eye, which Torai would only learn much later in the original plot. Realizing he is weak at long-range combat, Kyusuke decides not to waste his chance to improve and remembers the Hanamura house is the best place to learn magic. Excited asks Hatsumi to borrow a book on spatial magic that he has wanted to study for a long time. Hatsumi gives Kyusuke a cold look and refuses his request. She says he is stiffer with her than with her mother, and it bothers her. Surprised, Kyusuke hears her ask him not to be formal with her too, and says he was only following Marimo's orders, but Hatsumi insists he treat them both the same. Hatsumi steps up to Kasuke and asks him to show more affection and call her Oni-chan. Embarrassed, he hesitates, says it's a little awkward, and decides to call her Hatsumi-Nissan. Not exactly what she wanted, she accepts it as long as he keeps it up. Kyusuke feels relieved and follows her to the library, still finding her unpredictable. Struck by the house's large library, Kyusuke praises it enthusiastically. He says a normal house wouldn't have anything so grand, and Hatsumi tells him he can read any book there, which surprises him even more, and he wonders whether there's any important research data there, but she just shrugs and says as if it's no big deal. Excited to learn he can practice monocontrol while studying, Kyusuke asks Hatsumi whether the spatial magic books are there, and she says they are, but the really important ones are not in that space. Despite that, he feels motivated and prepares to study, surprised when magical hands appear to bring him books, making him even more excited. Hatsumi gives Kasuke a book, recommends it for studying spatial magic, and says she'll be working in that area and can answer questions. Kyusuke is surprised by how considerate she is, since she can be hard to read, so he asks about her time at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy. Hatsumi admits that, although she didn't make friends at Tsukuyomi Academy, seeing it as an excellent place for those seeking knowledge and strength, she notes many incredible people were there. At the academy, higher-level students can take more classes and learn high-level attack spells and other advanced forms of magic. Kyusuke is interested in advanced classes, but admits his body does not handle magic well, and Hatsumi offers to teach him, saying she is good at it. He believes he couldn't use it well, even with help. Ultimately, he decides that physical training and dungeon exploration are a better use of his time. Kyusuke notes that even before classes start, he is already practicing exactly what will be taught, including physical preparation, mana strengthening, and ranged combat. Living with Hatsumi and Marimo is an advantage because he learns magic from a beautiful mother and daughter duo. Kyusuke asks to visit the nearby waterfall, and Hatsumi confirms her mother allowed him to explore, so he leaves excitedly, saying he'll be back at night. Unlike the dorm in the game, this place lets him use the facilities without a curfew, making it ideal for unlocking new areas. Kyusuke runs toward the waterfall, remembering how a certain character took the protagonist there in the game. Not knowing if she will be there does not stop his excitement. That character was the one he trusted most in the game, never removed from the team, and the one he relied on to beat the toughest bosses. At the waterfall, Kyusuke finally meets Yukina Mizumori. He's thrilled to see her, since she was the heroine he most wanted to meet. Yukine, one of the big three in the MX game, is tying her hair with a serious expression while Kyusuke calls to her, clearly impressed by her presence. Kyusuke watches eagerly as Yukine practices alone with his sword by the waterfall. Her precise, powerful strikes clearly prove she deserves her reputation as one of the big three. He can hardly believe he is seeing the legendary Yukine in person. Yukine performs a powerful technique in front of the waterfall, her aura intense and precise, each move quick and sharp, showing complete mastery of the sword, while Kyusuke watches admiringly, impressed by the strength and elegance of the warrior he admired in the game. After finishing the cut under the waterfall, Yukine sheathes her sword gracefully, lets the water flow again, and turns silently with a calm expression. Kyusuke watches, impressed but hesitant to approach. Though excited, the weight of her presence makes him nervous, and he runs back with his heart pounding. Kyusuke is awestruck by Yukine's speed and cannot match her Naginata movements. He admits that no scene in the game compares to what he saw live. Fascinated, he wonders how she fights like that and dreams of reaching that level someday. Kyusuke begins thinking how to handle that speed, weighing whether to act before the enemy or to turn his scarf into a giant shield, and even without a definite solution, he knows he must find another way to deal with the challenge. Kyusuke is eager to train his reflexes with his scarf to match the enemy's speed, knowing he must sharpen his vision and learn new skills, and inspired by Yukine, he is determined to get stronger as soon as possible. Excited after training, Kyusuke returns home and resolves to keep working hard over the next few days. Dirty, he decided to take a quick shower, and when he got home, he found Marimo hadn't returned and assumed Hatsumi was still busy with work. The next morning, Marimo enters Kyusuke's room with a warm smile and says good morning. Then in a gentle tone she asks if he slept well, showing her usual concern and affection for him. Kyusuke wakes early and greets Marimo with a cheerful good morning. Marimo praises him for getting up so early, unlike her daughter who is still asleep and only wakes when someone calls. Marimo says breakfast will be ready when he returns, and Kyusuke heads out for a short run before starting the day. Kyusuke uses the private moment to train hard, practicing his moves with complete focus. Excited to have no one watching, he hopes steady effort will help him learn new skills. Kyusuke unlocks the powerful Mind's Eye skill, one of the game's strongest, increasing dodge chance, critical rate, and perception of enemy movements. For him, it is the ideal tool to overcome his fabric wall's visual limitation and is essential in advanced combat. Yukan Mizumari startles Kyusuk. A woman calmly introduces herself as a student at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy and praises Kyusuk for training so early. Kyusuk introduces himself to Yukin with obvious excitement, saying he will enter the academy that spring and that he can hardly believe he is talking to her in person, and Yukin notices his enthusiasm, but replies politely that he will be a year younger than her. Yukin senses Kyusuk before seeing him and asks if he is connected to the director. Kyusuk, a bit embarrassed, says the director only showed him around and apologizes if he is disturbing the place. Yukin answers directly that this is her running route, and his presence makes sense because he used the mind's eye ability, and Kyusuk asks whether he is being a bother and whether he can keep using the place. Yukan smiles, says she's glad and that watching him train motivates her too, then says she's about to take a break and asks if he wants to chat a bit, and Kyusuk agrees eagerly. Kyusuk says he trains every day to be as strong as possible before classes start, and Yuki notices he added weights to his stole. He reveals his special skill is the ability to freely manipulate this item and proudly shows how he can shape it into many forms, including for attacks. Kyusuk shapes his stole into a sofa, invites Yukan to sit, and she is impressed by his skill. It's impressive he can still keep the enchantment after so much physical effort. Yukan admits she would have run out of mana long ago if she were in his place. Kyusuk says he is honored to be praised by the vice president of the morality committee, and points out that everyone admires the school's 3 main committees. Yukin is surprised he knows this, yet says his reputation precedes him. She answers modestly that there are still higher levels to reach. When Yukin asks if Takyodo can use another type of magic, he admits he's terrible with emission magic, and she demonstrates a water affinity by producing only a small stream. She reveals she has a special magical constitution, and they both laugh about it, showing they understand each other better. Takyodo apologizes for not paying more attention, and Yukin replies calmly that she is having a great time. Motivated, he vows to train hard and reach the top of the academy. Yukian watches silently, clearly moved by his determination. Impressed by Takyodo's determination, Yukin says that with this willpower, even an important seat on the 3 committees could be within his reach. Excited, he promises to do his best to achieve that. To reach the top, he knows he must join one of the elite groups made up of the school's most powerful students. Yukan gets ready to resume training and asks Takyodo to join her. Excited, he says he'd like to ask a favor. Determined, he bows and asks her to teach him how to use the mind's eye skill. Yukin, surprised, asks if he is really sure. Yukin leads Takyodo to a waterfall for training. They stand under the falling water as he shivers from the cold and complains about the temperature, while Yukin stays calm and focused, showing discipline and concentration. Takyodo trembles in the cold, desperate to leave and wondering what it all means. Yukin sharply scolds him for being distracted, tells him to clear his mind and keep his mana active, and demands full focus on the training under the waterfall. Yukin says that once Takyodo masters the mind's eye skill, he will be able to sense it even with his eyes closed. The skill tracks enemy mana movements, giving a clear combat advantage, and at higher levels it can let the user see through objects and predict the future. But she has not reached that level yet, and Takyodo, shivering in the cold, calls it a psychic training game and says it is no help right now. Yukini tells Takyodo to sharpen his senses and fill his mana with the 7th sense. Trying to obey, he complains that even feeling his own mana is difficult and that his world had nothing like it, and Yukina insists the 7th sense is an organ that detects mana. Cold and worn out, Takyodo says he'll try, and she tells him to stop complaining and focus. Shivering from the cold, Takyodo grows desperate as he realizes he endured an hour under the waterfall with no results. Yaokin then admits he was wrong and says you don't learn a skill overnight. She still believes he can master the mind's eye and says the key is to keep believing and practicing. Yukin promises to train with Takyodo until he masters the mind's eye, says there is still time before classes and urges him to be patient, and reveals this practice is part of her own progress. Wanting to match her father, she aims for his level because he could feel monsters' weak points just by touch. Takyodo lights up when he learns the mind's eye reveals weak points and says he wants to reach that level, and Yukin smiles and confidently confirms. He recalls that in the game the skill took 3 turns to learn and expects to pick it up in a few days with Yukin's help. As they part, he thanks her for the support, and she simply replies, "You did it." Takyodo notices his cloak is filthy and complains he has no spare. Regretting he didn't buy more, he laments while putting the cloak in the laundry. After showering, he says that only erotic game protagonists and hopeless idiots would spy on someone in the bath, then walks to a door, knocks, and asks if someone is inside. Kyusuk enters the kitchen and praises the breakfast. The woman, still busy, asks him to wake Hatsumi. Agreeing, he goes upstairs, knocks on her door and calls, but gets no answer. Kyusuk hesitates for a moment but goes in anyway, saying it does not matter. As he enters, he calls for Hatsumi, warns he is coming in, and notices she is in a deep sleep, so he realizes she has not woken. Kyusuk is surprised to find Hatsumi asleep, in revealing clothes. He tries to resist the temptation, moves closer, and gently wakes her, saying breakfast is ready. Embarrassed, Kyusuk tries to cover Hatsumi with the sheet. Approaching her, he trips and gets stuck beside her on the bed. Still asleep, she instinctively hugs him, leaving him speechless, panicked, and unsure how to escape the awkward situation. Trying not to wake her, he eases away, but the situation stays awkward, and seeing her face up close makes him think she is beautiful and feel even more nervous. Worried that Kasuk and Hatsumi are late, the older sister goes upstairs. When she enters the room, an unexpected, misunderstood scene causes both of them to panic. Kasuk tries desperately to explain while she reacts, embarrassed and scared. The older sister rushes in and completely misunderstands, thinking Kyusuk and Hatsumi are romantically involved. She celebrates over the top while Kyusuk keeps trying to explain. Hatsumi stays deeply asleep, dreaming about her mother's food. The scene then cuts to the house, calm after breakfast. After breakfast, the older sister asks if Kyusuk is available. After he confirms, she asks him to help with shopping. Kyusuk agrees eagerly, but when he gets the list, he is confused by something he sees on it. Kasuk finds the list excessive for only 3 people, even as a hungry teenager. His sister then explains why. Ludi is moving into their house, and they'll have a welcome party that night. Kyusuk looks surprised while Yukon watches quietly. Resting after shopping, Kyusuk is surprised to learn Ludi will really move in. His sister thanks him for his help and warns the welcome party will be at night. She uses the opportunity to make it Kyusuk's welcome party as well. Yukon takes notes attentively, and the sister says Claris, a martial arts master and excellent teacher, can help Kyusuk a lot, and he hopes it will not get awkward between them. Kyusuk comments that, besides Yukon's advice, he would like to hear more opinions about how to learn skills. Upon learning, he met Yukon. His sister brightens and suggests inviting her to the party. Kuzk says she will help him train for a while. The sister becomes enthusiastic and says she'll put even more effort into the cooking because Ludi and Claris are used to delicious meals. Hatsumi says she wants to help make Kasuki happy, and Marimo immediately takes charge of the kitchen, asking Hatsumi to handle the decorations. She then calls Kyusuk and whispers in his ear, asking him to keep an eye on Hatsumi all the time without explaining why. On the drive, the maid worries about Ludi living in the same house as a man, even with Hatsumi and Marino there, and Ludi reassures her. He insists he's not a bad person and reminds her he risked his life to save them. Ludi teases Claris for worrying too much. Soon after, she looks out the window at large floating buildings and says they are almost at their destination. Fast, precise strikes set the pace as the woman dominates, moving with agility to control the space while the man tries to react, and she stays steady and confident, advancing with accurate attacks that knock down her opponents. Takyoto dodges a quick attack and gets a compliment. Someone points out the strike hit the woman's chest, surprising her. Tension rises as the fighters continue to face each other intensely. With a precise kick, the woman wins the fight and remains confident. Offering water to a tired Takyoto on the ground, she listens as the other character complains about losing again, tells them that people with a strong goal recover more easily, and Takyoto thanks her and says he hopes to improve soon. She says she intends to get stronger and will not let him get ahead of her. He says he won't give up either. Convinced she already faces the same problems as in the main story, he wants to trigger her awakening, no matter the cost. They note that time passes quickly. He says he heard the Clover Princess will move to the Hanamura house today and that he needs to help there. She says she will attend the welcome party that night. They say goodbye. The scene shows activity at the Hanamura house. Arriving at the house, they are struck by the elves' elegant, stylish appearance. Kyusuk meets Marino, who tells him Ludichin and Clarisjan will arrive soon, and Kyusuk confirms he understands. Ludivine Marie-Ange de la Trèfle, the Trèfle Empire's second princess, arrives and greets everyone with elegant poise, and receives a warm welcome from Marino and Kyusuk. Ludivine hands the shawl back to Kyusuk and thanks him again. Asking him to call her Ludi and saying they will be classmates, she watches Kyusuk accept, relieved, and tells him she's looking forward to it. Claris greets Hatsumi happily, saying it's been a long time since they last saw each other. Hatsumi is relieved to see her doing well. Ludivine tells Kasuk that Hatsumi taught Claris how to use magic, and he is surprised. Claris had twice the mana of a normal person but couldn't use it well. Thanks to Hatsumi, she can now control magic properly. Hatsumi praises her effort. Claris gets emotional and says she has always felt cared for by the Hanamura family, and Hyusuk realizes he feels the same. The bodyguard thanks them for preparing the room, delivers the king's message, and is reassured not to worry. Ludivine, please make yourself at home and relax. Soon after everyone decided to take a break for tea, the carriers announced they had finished their work and said goodbye as they returned to the Empire. While everyone else takes a tea break, Claris stays behind to organize the items they brought in the carriage. Hyusuke finds it odd and offers to help because there's a lot to arrange, and Clara accepts, surprised and happy with the gesture. Hyusuke insists on helping Claris become more familiar with the house too, but she gets nervous and tries to refuse. He lifts a box marked handle with care. When asked what's inside, Claris is mortified and admits it's her underwear, saying she couldn't ask a man to deal with it. Hyusuke is stunned to discover he has been carrying Claris's underwear. Visibly embarrassed, she takes the box herself while he promises not to look and tries to calm her, saying it's all right. Claris apologizes for the embarrassment. Hyusuke shifts awkwardly as he thinks about what he's carrying while Claris is underwear and begins to sweat. Pointing the way to her room, he sees Claris smile and blush as she thanks him for being so considerate, and before they go up, he asks her to be careful as she walks. Claris thinks she was worried about Ludivine living with a man, but feels calm because it's Hyusuke, yet she is shocked when she notices something suspicious on his back. Has a surprised, nervous look. Claris panics when she sees her panties on Hyusuke's head, screaming and demanding to know why it happened. Confused, he tries to remove them, but Claris begs him not to touch. Mortified, Claris apologizes, saying she stained Hyusuke's eyes with that awkward scene. In her panic, she even considers punishing herself for the shame, but Hyusuke calms her and asks her not to overdo it or keep bowing like that. Amid the confusion, Hyusuke and Claris stumble and land on top of each other. Claris, embarrassed by the awkward moment, reminds Hyusuke that this kind of accident keeps happening while he feels pain from the fall. Things stay awkward until they move forward. Hyusuke is relieved after stopping Claris from overreacting, but she faints in the process, and while he cleans up, Ludivine arrives worried after hearing the noise, so Hyusuke panics when he sees the stairs strewn with underwear and thinks no one can see that scene. Hyusuke downplays it, saying they only missed a step and everything is fine now, trying to calm Ludivine. Still confused, Claris can't clearly remember what happened. Hyusuke breathes a sigh of relief after handling the situation, and Claris apologizes for worrying everyone. A new visitor arrives with a gift for the celebration and thanks them for the invitation. Morno tells Hyusuke this must be Yukon, and everyone welcomes her warmly, making the celebration livelier. Marino and Yukon warmly welcome everyone and say they are glad to have them here. Ludivine, Claris, and Hyusuke thank their hosts for the warm reception at Hanamura House, smiling as the festive mood fills the place with joy. Arriving at the hall decorated for the welcome party, Yukini offers to help, but Marino tells her to relax and enjoy. Claris introduces herself as Ludivine's maid and cheerfully says she'll be a new student that year. Soon Marino announces the food is ready, and everyone gets excited. Everyone is impressed by the table full of dishes Marino prepared. Inviting the group to help themselves, she is thanked by Ludivine while everyone begins tasting the food and praising how delicious everything looks. Guests beam with surprise and happiness as they taste Marino's food. Ludivine says it's even better than the chef's food in her kingdom, and Claris is impressed too. Morno is very happy to hear the compliments and proud of her work. Claris praises Marino, admitting that although she's confident as a Trefla house servant, she was outdone, especially by the dish's incredible sauce. Marino smiles and offers a special wine with the meal, charming the guests, who admire the drink's beautiful color. Marino pours the special wine, saying she saved it for an occasion like this and that there's juice for the younger ones, and Claris is surprised to learn that Hatsumi, besides being good at magic, also cooks. Hatsumi, a bit shy, says she wanted to prepare something for the party too, and Hyusuke notes he's never tried her cooking. Ludivine says she'd love to taste it, and Hatsumi, surprised and a little embarrassed, quickly offers to help with whatever is needed. Despite being a knight, she remains a servant whose purpose is to serve others. Kusk uses the opportunity to ask Claris if she has experience with swords since she also teaches. He says he wants to learn the technique, but expects it will take a long time. Claris pauses and searches her memory for a helpful tip. Claris explains that new skills usually appear when the desire for them becomes extreme, and that was true for her as well. Marino notes this is even more important for Kyusuk because of his unique body. They awkwardly compare his situation to that of a founding saint who also couldn't use long-range magic, and Ludivine finds the similarity curious. Kyusuk believes he must be creative to become the strongest and use his abilities to his advantage. Clara says her fighting style completely changed after she gained those skills. At first she used only swords and bows, but after learning magic she began fighting with a magic sword and casting shield spells. Kyusuk admits he still hasn't chosen his main weapon, and Clara says learning several skills will open up many options and be very useful. Offering advice and even lessons, she leaves Kyusuk happy and relieved to have her and Yuki's support. Marino and Claris enjoy drinking together, with Claris visibly embarrassed but happy. Kyusuk warns the group they've had enough to drink, but Marino opens another bottle and excites them. To loosen things up, she suggests a simple game everyone can play to help them bond. Tipsy from the wine, Marino decides everyone will play the king's game and raises the sticks excitedly. Kyusuk grows nervous as she realizes how changed she is, and curious Ludivine and Hatsumi ask exactly what the game is. Kyusuk says the king's game is a party game where everyone must follow the king's commands, which makes Ludivine a little scared because it sounds like a punishment. Marino becomes the first king and orders whoever draws number 1 to give her a shoulder massage, which puts Ludivine at ease because it is not embarrassing. Kyusuke draws the first stick and ends up massaging Marino's shoulders. Pleased, he says he hit the right spot and thinks she was the real winner, and soon Marino urges the group to play another round while Kyusuk just wants to avoid becoming king next time. Gripping the king's stick, Kyusuk grows nervous, remembering that the game's usual commands are the most embarrassing. Pressed to make it exciting, Ludivine uses a standard command and immediately regrets it, holding his stick as he announces that number 3 must remove a piece of clothing, shocking everyone. Claris, completely drunk, stands up and shouts that she will take off all her clothes for Ludivine's sake and is willing to do anything. Immediately after, she blushes and admits that, as a woman, she feels hesitant, while Kyusuk can only think she's drunk and out of her mind. Marino offers Yukine a place to stay for the night, but she decides to go home and thanks her for the offer. Kyusuk offers to go with her. Meanwhile, Ludivine and Clara remark on how much fun the party was and start talking about cleaning up. Hatsumi stops everyone from leaving, announces she finished cooking, and asks them to try her dish before the party ends. The food glows oddly and frightens the group, and Kyusuk, tense, tries to refuse politely while figuring out what the fluorescent thing is. At night, a large yacht glides under a lit bridge as fireworks explode overhead, creating an impressive, festive scene that feels like the peak of a luxurious celebration. Kyusuk reels, trying to hold on after tasting Hatsumi's strange dish. Marino shouts for everyone to stay steady. Finally, the group celebrates that Ludivine could eat without trouble, while Kyusuk is so dizzy he says he even saw the city lights and lies down, drawing concerned and amused comments from the others. Claris trains Kyusuk with a sword and a shield. Marino and Kyusuk are surprised. Kyusuk praises her strength. Marino is impressed by his talent despite it being his first time wielding a sword, and Clara smiles saying he really has a knack for it. Kyusuk gets excited about exploring dungeons to become stronger. Marino and Claris tell him he must wait for classes to start before he can get permission, stressing that mastering the basics and building endurance is essential for growth, which makes Kyusuk even more eager to begin. Kyusuk fondly remembers the expansions and special dungeons from the game he used to play, including the April Fool's event. Exclusive shop bonus dungeons showed that some were difficult, and I even felt sorry for the heroines involved. Kyusuk recalls being frustrated when he had to buy the same game 5 times because each store sold a different exclusive edition. Kyusuk even bought digital and special editions directly from the developer and realized no amount of money could keep up with all those purchases, and he remembers the nightmare of dealing with exclusive shop bonuses. It took many forms: body pillows, tapestries, autographed cards, posters, postcards, special audios, and more. He even laughs alone remembering he bought everything expecting delays, only to have the items released normally, which turned the stress into a strangely nostalgic memory. Kyusuk says excitedly that after mastering mana strengthening, he wants to learn more. Marimo notices his interest, comes over, suggests donation magic she has in mind, and even brought a library book for him. She had thought of everything to help him advance his studies, and Kyusuk gets excited learning about a spell that transfers mana to another person, like recovery and reinforcement magic. He decides he truly wants to learn it, so he can make good use of his large mana or reserve. Soon after, he used the technique to supply his companions, thinking they could tackle dungeon challenges without worry while he served as the group's MP battery. Kyusuk absorbs the new spell so fast it feels like it's going straight into his brain. He surprises everyone by getting stronger so fast, while Ludi trains with Hatsumi to learn how to shorten magical chants, showing the whole group is dedicated to evolving. Hatsumi says shortening chants is essential to casting stronger spells and praises Ludi, adding that her talent means she will get stronger quickly. Ludi's request for very strict training excited Hatsumi as the teacher. Kyusuk still wonders if Ludi can handle Hatsumi's often harsh training. Ludi lies on the ground, panting and completely exhausted after the intense training. Tears come quietly as she realizes she never expected Hatsumi's training to be this hard. Ludi lies exhausted on the sofa, saying she can't even get up because her mana is almost completely drained, and asks Kyusuk for help as he looks worried. As he considers his options, he remembers the donation magic that can transfer mana. Ludi, sweating and clearly uncomfortable, says she wants to take a bath because she feels sticky. Kyusuk excitedly explains that using donation magic will restore Ludi's mana and raise his magic level, achieving 2 goals at once. He admits he learned the spell recently. Ludi is surprised he can use that kind of magic. Then Kusuke remembers trying it on Claris, but is not sure it worked because Claris began trembling and behaving oddly while insisting she would not falter. With Marino and Hatsumi busy and Claris away, Ludi says Kyusuk is the only person she can trust right now, and she agrees to help him practice the spell. Kyusuk says he needs direct skin contact with Senmana, grows shy and asks where he can touch. Ludi, a little shy, offers her hand, which eases him and he thanks her, seeing it as a safe option. Kyusuk grows completely nervous holding Ludi's hand, noticing how delicate and pale it is, with slightly pink fingertips and a little sweat, while Ludi is confused, thinks it's just a normal hand and begins to blush. Tension builds and their hearts race, creating a very awkward atmosphere between them. Embarrassed after praising Ludi's hand too much, Kyusuk apologizes and says he got carried away like it was a game, and blushing Ludi tells him to just start since being watched is embarrassing. After they joke that it would be a disaster if Clara caught them, Kyusuk acts quickly and continues the spell while holding her hand firmly. Kyusuk activates the mana donation magic, senses Ludi's remaining mana, and channels his own mana to her. Knowing it's simple but hard to control, he tells himself that too much mana disperses into the air and too little won't work, yet he keeps the flow going, determined to help Ludi recover. Kyusuk asks Ludi how she feels after the mana transfer, and she answers uncertainly. He decides to increase the flow to help more. When he does, Ludi immediately flinches as an intense wave of energy runs through her body, causing a sharp tremor and leaving her surprised. Startled by a strong mana shock, Ludi jumps, clutching her chest, panting and confused. Doubt nags her about its safety, and she feels something is clearly wrong while noticing how her body reacted as she tries to understand what just happened. Kyusuk nervously explains, insisting he did not mean to do any of it, and Ludi, still uneasy, decides to give him another chance. She lets Kasuk hold her hand again as he breathes deeply and promises to focus fully on controlling the mana flow correctly. Kusuke tries to continue the monodonation spell, but becomes very nervous because they're so close and Ludi's reactions make things worse, with Ludi starting to sweat and make embarrassed moans from the magical heat, and Kusuke thinks nothing will work with his heart pounding like a drum. Embarrassed, Ludi says it's getting too hot, and Kyusuk asks her not to make such suggestive sounds during the process. Kyusuk reassures Ludi that she has recovered enough to stand and only needs a little more to be fully recovered. Confident it will work, he focuses and says he's close to leveling up, then promises to do his best to make the process as easy as possible for her. Kyusuk begs to try the spell one more time, insisting it will work now and that it will be quick, so Ludi, understanding his desire to grow stronger, agrees. Kyusuk relaxes, says he doesn't need to worry, celebrates, and thanks her for the chance.